Quiet Place is directed by John Krasinski and stars John Krasinski as well as his real-life wife Emily Blunt. It's a horror film that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where monsters hunt things based on sound, so in order to survive you have to make as little noise as possible. So the film concentrates on this family led by John Krasinski and Emily Blunt who are trying to live their lives in their home by making as little noise as possible. This film has been getting rave reviews. As of this video, it still has a 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. I saw an early screening of it last night, so I got to see if it lived up to the hype. And unfortunately, and not all that surprising to me at least, it didn't live up to the hype. A Quiet Place is not a bad film, it's not a terrible film, it's better than most horror films that come out nowadays because most of them are just straight up terrible. But for me personally, the film just wasn't as good as it could have been and as good as the critics have made it out to be. Starting off with some positives first, I thought the film was pretty well acted. John Krasinski was good, Emily Blunt was great as she always is, and the two kids in the film were really good, especially the deaf girl, she was quite good. And the film was also well directed. This is John Krasinski's directorial debut, and in terms of actually filming the film and setting up the shots, he does a good job behind the camera. And the biggest thing that this film has going for it was the thing I was most looking forward to about the film, and that's the concept of the creatures that hunt people based on sound. And I liked the little methods the family has to avoid making noise, like the markers on the floor where they can avoid the creaky floorboards. It's a really great concept for a horror film, but the problem with A Quiet Place for me is that I felt this film was pretty much just all concept. The concept of this film feels like it would make a really great 15 to 20 minute short film. People living in a post-apocalyptic world, they have to avoid making sound to avoid the creatures that are hunting them, good moments of tension, boom, good 20-minute short film right there. But here they stretch it to 90 minutes, and even though the film never dragged, in fact when it finished I was like, wow, that was actually pretty quick, it still feels like a short film stretched into a 90-minute film. And that's because the concept is all this film really brings to the table. It doesn't really bring any good narrative or any strong characters to service the concept. At a point I stood back and I stopped worrying about the characters making sounds, and I asked myself, do I care about what's going on in this film? And I didn't. And whatever story this film has is super thin. Like, the only real narrative thing in this film is the father-daughter issues. The daughter doesn't think her dad loves her anymore because of a tragedy that happened in the past that the daughter blames herself for. So there's a little bit of trust issues between the dad and the daughter. He doesn't really trust her to do anything really. And when they argue about stuff, it is in sign language and it does kind of feel different. But when you actually look at it, you're like, yeah, I've seen this kind of stuff in 1,000 films before. That is the only real narrative thing that they put into this film for you to even remotely care about, and I didn't care about it. So then you're left to look at the rest of it, and what A Quiet Place is an hour-and-a-half film of monster attacks. A noise will happen and a monster will come to try and find the source of the noise, so I have to be really quiet, we're all on edge now. That moment breezes past, a little bit of time goes by, and then another noise will happen, and then another monster comes in to try and find the noise, you have to be really quiet again, and it's kind of rinse and repeat for the entire film more or less. There were a couple of scenes that had good suspense in them. I'd be lying if I said that I didn't once feel any suspense during this film, because I did. But it never reached that level of white knuckle, heart pounding, gripping your chair kind of suspense for me. It didn't have that impact for me, and that's what I wanted from the film, and given the rave reviews, that's what I expected from it. So it brings the concept to the table, and not only does it not back it up with great story and characters, it doesn't 100% nail the execution of the suspense and the tension. And the film does have some jump scares in it, and the jump scares didn't piss me off in this film as they do in most horror films. The jump scares in the first 15 to 20 minutes were a bit cheap, like a noise will happen, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, is there a monster on the roof? And then it'd be really quiet, building up the tension, then bam, a raccoon falls off the roof, and you're like, no, okay, don't start doing this. But later on, I felt like the jump scares are a little bit more relevant given the premise, you know, they're staying quiet so any sound will be amplified for them. In the end, A Quiet Place didn't live up to the hype for me, and I know I'm going to be in the minority on this. I know everyone else is going to love it, and I'm just going to be the one lonely person over here going, yeah, it didn't really do it for me. I'm used to being in the minority by now, so nothing's really new. The film was well acted, it was well directed, there were some good scenes of tension, especially towards the third act, but for me, the film wasn't as effective as it could have been, and it wasn't as suspenseful as it could have been. And it's an hour-and-a-half film of characters trying to not make sounds, and there's no real good story or characters to back up the great concept. Again, it's not a terrible film, it's a lot better than most horror films nowadays, but like I said, for me, it just didn't live up to the hype, so I'm going to give A Quiet Place a 2.5 out of 5. And I'll just say this to people who are getting the hopes up, this film is not a Secret Cloverfield film. There was some speculation that this could be a Secret Cloverfield film, but it's not. There's no title at the end saying A Cloverfield Place or anything like that. So A Quiet Place, have you seen it? What did you think about it? I know what's not going to be A Quiet Place, the comment section of videos of people who didn't like the film as much as everybody else, that's for sure. So whatever you thought about A Quiet Place, guess let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more of my stuff, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.